En este bloque debemos seguir con el tema del lenguaje cinematográfico. Cuando se quiere informar al espectador acerca del lugar donde está el personaje, se puede hacer por medio de un movimiento de cámara llamado traveling. En el traveling, la cámara se mueve con el personaje o siguiendo a distintos personajes. En el primer caso, el objetivo casi siempre es mostrar lo que el personaje está haciendo. En el segundo, el objetivo es mostrar el espacio en el cual se desarrollará la acción. Aquí van algunos ejemplos.
Motivated camera movement generates the much-needed energy to keep your audience hooked. Today, we're going to talk about a shot that has become a staple in Hollywood: the tracking shot. A tracking shot is any shot that physically moves the camera through the scene. Today, we're going to show you 3 ways you can improve your tracking shots. Will provide their own unique pros and cons. Does the location have columns or walls that can help create layers and depth? Does some special angle or a set of stairs provide the ability for a big reveal? The best tracking shots have a symbiotic relationship with the location. This example from The Wrestler shows you how the layout of the kitchen is similar enough to an arena tunnel to evoke that emotion from the protagonist.
Como ya mencionábamos antes, la cámara en mano se ha convertido en un recurso tan usado que se han desarrollado equipos que ayudan a cargar la cámara. Esta necesidad surge por la cantidad de horas que se trabaja regularmente en el cine, generalmente de 10 a 12 horas diarias. Debido a esto, cargar la cámara durante tantas horas al día puede traer consecuencias de salud al operador de la misma. En el siguiente ejemplo veremos un plano secuencia hecho con un aparato llamado Steadicam, que sirve para cargar la cámara y que ayuda a que la imagen sea muy estable, en vez de brincada, como ocurre generalmente cuando no hay este aparato.
Thank you, sir. All right, see you later. Thanks.
What are you doing? You leaving your car?
Watches the car for me. It's easier than leaving it out of the garage and waiting. It's a lot quicker that way. You know what I mean? Huh? I like going this way. It's better than waiting in the line. How you doing? Good, good. What's up? Here you go. How you doing, Gino?
Hey, Henry, how are you?
Good, good. Hey. Every time I come here, every time you two. Don't you work?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good seeing you.
Hi, how are you? Anthony, right in the front.
Great, great, thanks.
Anything you need, Henry, just let me know.
Hey, how come we can't get...
I know you're waiting for a table. I'll be right with you.
I have another drink. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks. Hey, how are you guys doing? How are you? See you. Hey, Henry, how are you? What's up? Good, good. How you doing?
You gave them $20 each.
All right.
Henry, this is with Mr. Tony over there.
Where?
Over there.
Oh, thanks a lot, Tony. Thank you. Salud.
Hay recursos narrativos relacionados con el foco. El foco se usa en general para resaltar un objeto o personaje en la pantalla. Existe un recurso llamado enfoque selectivo. Este es utilizado para fijar la atención de quien mira el encuadre. Esa imagen tiene el único foco que hay en el cuadro. Lo demás se ve borroso, quizá incluso sin suficiente luz para distinguirlo claramente. Otro recurso relacionado con el foco es el cambio del foco. Este se usa para cambiar la atención del espectador de un personaje a otro dentro de la pantalla, o de una persona a un objeto, sin cambiar el encuadre. Veamos cómo funciona.
Un gran ejemplo de enfoque selectivo y total es Ciudadano Kane. En Ciudadano Kane Orson Welles probó todas las técnicas existentes en la historia del cine en ese momento. Entonces, en esta secuencia se ve claramente cómo el personaje principal, que está más cerca de la cámara, es el que está enfocado y el fondo está completamente borroso.
Como en el caso de la cámara en mano o del traveling, algunos recursos del lenguaje del cine se han modificado para el desarrollo de la técnica. Por ejemplo, la cámara lenta. Esta se usó tradicionalmente para acentuar el dramatismo de un momento en las escenas de acción. Durante la época del cine hecho con negativo, la cámara lenta se lograba corriendo la película mucho más aprisa que la velocidad a la cual se corre normalmente. Cuando más tarde la película se proyectaba a velocidad normal, la imagen se mueve lentamente. Esto sucede porque en lugar del número normal de cuadros, 24 por segundo, la película corriendo a gran velocidad tiene el doble o triple de cuadros fotografiados. Este proceso requería una serie de acciones: ajustar la velocidad de cámara, ajustar el diafragma de obturación, etc. Es decir, si no se filmaba propositivamente en cámara lenta o rápida, ya no era posible obtener este efecto en la postproducción. Con el uso de las técnicas digitales, la imagen se puede hacer más lenta o más rápida sin necesidad de hacer nada en el momento de la filmación. Pero no solo eso, la imagen se puede hacer más lenta por etapas. Una parte de la imagen puede verse medio lenta, otras a velocidad normal, y otra más verse como congelada dentro de la misma toma. Se puede incluso lograr que la imagen se eche en reversa. En el siguiente clip de la película Carrie, podemos ver cómo la cámara lenta ayuda a aumentar la tensión para que la escena sea más dramática.
sorry, Cassie. We're all sorry, Cassie.
Trust me, Carrie. You can trust me. Trust me, Carrie. You can trust me. Trust me, Carrie. You can trust me.
Como ya mencionamos, hoy en día la cámara lenta se hace por medios digitales durante la postproducción y se usa sobre todo para dar realce a las batallas o escenas de acción. Veamos a continuación varios ejemplos de cómo funciona la cámara lenta por medios digitales.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Este clip es una recopilación de varias escenas de películas que usan la cámara lenta realizada por medios digitales. Hay una diferencia en la manera como se ve la calidad de la imagen procesada digitalmente. En estas imágenes hay una falta de realismo, pero esta falta de realismo no se considera un problema o un defecto. Hay una aceptación tácita de que lo que se está viendo no es la realidad. Este hecho, al parecer insignificante, es importante porque el concepto de realismo se había considerado como una de las características más importantes del cine a lo largo de su historia. Aceptar la falta de realismo en el cine cambia el paradigma que había caracterizado al medio hasta el día de hoy. Este aspecto técnico apoya la posibilidad expresiva de quien cuenta la historia, pero al mismo tiempo niega la posibilidad de realidad de lo que vemos. La discusión acerca de los nuevos recursos digitales del cine nos lleva a pasar al tema de la animación. Una de las condiciones para hacer animación por computadora es que los actores se pongan sensores para que la computadora lea o aprenda la manera como las personas se mueven en realidad y luego lo replique. Las siguientes imágenes son un ejemplo. Otro aspecto del uso de imágenes creadas digitalmente es la sustitución de los efectos especiales, entre ellas las explosiones. Hoy día, gracias a la tecnología digital, ya no es necesario hacer explosiones reales, las cuales siempre representaban un peligro para los actores, los dobles de acción o el grupo de rodaje. Veamos algunos ejemplos. Veamos otro ejemplo, pero este se trata de cómo se hace una escena de fuego real. La diferencia es que lo que se produce por medio de efectos especiales por computadora tiene cero riesgo.
Here's our raw clip with the raw sound.
Hablando de riesgos, veamos la manera como la tecnología ha impactado las escenas de acción. Entramos aquí al terreno de la animación y su influencia en la realización de los dobles de acción en las escenas de peligro. Desde las primeras películas de cine, había personas que se dedicaban a hacer las escenas de peligro. Las siguientes imágenes son la primera caída hecha por un doble de acción profesional en la historia del cine. Se trata de una película de 1903 llamada El Gran Asalto al Tren. Los dobles de acción son personas especializadas en realizar escenas de peligro. Ellos se disfrazan de manera tal que aparecen como si fueran el actor que representa el papel del personaje que debe de saltar, pelear o estar en medio de una explosión. En general, los actores tienen prohibido por contrato hacer las acciones de peligro de las películas en las que participan, porque la película no se puede terminar si algo les pasa. Las escenas con dobles de acción se siguen haciendo, pero la animación se ha convertido en un recurso poderosísimo para hacer cosas que ningún ser humano es capaz de realizar. Veamos ejemplos de cómo fue utilizada la animación en El Hombre Araña.
The production design of The Amazing Spider-Man required the construction of elaborate digital sets, from the murky subterranean sewer system where Spider-Man and the Lizard face off for the first time, to the massive New York cityscapes, complete with animated traffic and digital New Yorkers going about their business. With an entirely digital scene, the director has free rein over manipulation of the camera to create an immersive experience where the audience goes along for the ride as Spider-Man swings through the streets of New York, not just traveling with them, but seeing the world through Spider-Man's point of view as well. Another artistic advantage that we have with these all-digital scenes is that we can animate the lens throughout the shot to achieve dramatically foreshortened compositions that have become one of the signatures of the Spider-Man artwork. In the broader scope, one of our main goals was to achieve an organic, natural look for this film. In particular, the movement style of the characters had to be believable, and the camera work has to support that naturalistic movement style so that both elements reside in the same world. And this is where our handheld virtual camera system comes into play. Here's the rough blocking pass of one of the shots in the high school environment. The animation file is being played back in real time through the system, and the camera operator can interactively frame the action just as an operator would on set, but in this case, impulsively reacting to the animated characters as if they were right there in front of him, which helps ground the animation in a film where the bounds of reality are already being pushed to the extreme. Virtual cinematography also allows for creative direction of the lighting as well. In the chaos of a fight scene like this, we can make certain actions clearer by throwing light exactly where it's needed to highlight key moments in the animation, leading the eye of the audience in a more directed way than if we were limited to pre-existing photography. The final result puts audiences front and center in a dynamic balance between nuanced character animation, interactive camera work, and the dramatic composition of light, color, modeling, and effects.
Pasemos ahora a la animación por computadora para la creación de escenarios. Se trata de un recurso tecnológico fantástico y significa un cambio sustancial en las herramientas que tiene el cine a su disposición. El uso de la tecnología digital del cine tiene múltiples consecuencias, entre ellas, la manera como se crean los lugares donde ocurre la historia. Antes se trataba básicamente de crear espacios en un estudio o en un lugar. El espacio se modifica para poder llevar a cabo la escena. En el siguiente clip se verá un caso extremo de cómo se podía crear de manera real un lugar donde la acción debía ocurrir.
In Inception, Nolan and his team created the gravity-defying dream within a dream fight scene by channeling none other than talented singer and hat enthusiast Jamiroquai and built a 100-foot-long hotel hallway on a rotating set. According to actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the filming process required as much mental flexibility as it did acrobatic balance. Telling E! Online, I had to think of it like, this is the ground. Okay, now this is the ground. And now this is the ground. It was just that the ground was always moving under me. That was the mind game I had to play to make it work. With a camera mounted on a track that ran the length of the set, Nolan was able to create seamless, stable shots even as the hallway itself spun 360 degrees.
La cámara está fija afuera y los actores y el escenario dan vuelta frente a ella. Hay una gran diferencia entre hacer esto, que es muy costoso y difícil de controlar, y la manera como esto se puede hacer por medio del uso de recursos digitales para llegar casi al mismo resultado. En la actualidad, los lugares donde aparecen los actores de una película pueden ser completamente creados por computadora. Lo que se necesita es una pantalla verde o green screen, una cámara digital y un programa que permita crear imágenes en esa pantalla verde. Con esta tecnología, también se puede borrar lo que el director no quiere que se vea.
I'll give a little caveat that this clip I actually prefer to have the person in the shot, but I wanted to test out the feature and see what its strengths and weaknesses are. The first, and I think most important step to getting decent results from this feature is to create a quality mask around the object that you want to remove. You'll then need to track that object by keyframing the mask throughout the whole clip. Now this is somewhat tedious, but you don't want to skimp on this step or you'll get poor results. I started with one keyframe every 2 seconds, and then I went back through and fine-tuned the movement and the shape of the mask to ensure it closely tracked the subject. When the mask is done and I finished all keyframing, I invert the mask so that everything except the subject is visible. You can remove objects from video footage like this.
Veamos algunos ejemplos de cómo se ve la creación de escenarios por computadora y cómo se insertan ahí los personajes y quizás algunos elementos de la utilería o escenografía. En el ejemplo anterior, vimos que la imagen se modifica añadiendo cosas que no están ahí por medio de pantallas llamadas green screen. En algunas de las imágenes que acabamos de ver, se ve claramente cómo los actores caminan en un espacio que en el fondo tiene esa pantalla verde. Para darnos una idea más clara de cómo se logra esto, veamos un ejemplo, con uno de los programas que se usan para crear escenarios virtuales. Las imágenes que vamos a ver son creadas con instrumentos de software por computadora. El programa tiene un catálogo en el cual hay texturas, plantas y hasta tipos determinados. Veamos algunas imágenes de paisajes creados 100% por computadora y un ejemplo de cómo se crean estas.
I think it's really important to spread information freely and create concentrations of value that normal people have access to. That's one of the reasons I love Quixel Megascans. Quixel Megascans is an online asset library with currently 10,000 unique photorealistic scans, with more and more added every day. This massive database contains almost every material you could imagine, as well as fully fledged 3D assets and vegetation that come ready to be used in offline renderers and real-time game engines like Unreal Engine 4 and Unity. Once you have this quantity of photorealistic assets at your fingertips, it becomes easier than ever before to build 3D scenes. For GDC 2019, we wanted to demonstrate this with our new cinematic short film, Rebirth. The goal was to show that not only is photorealism now fully achievable in real time, but that when leveraging Megascans, it can also be done really quickly and with very few people. We wanted to prove a simple and fun workflow that works for everyone, for games, VFX, ArchViz, automotive, and beyond. And most importantly, we wanted to show everyone exactly how all of this was done. In this tutorial series, I'm going to dive into our thought process when constructing scenes like these, and showcase some of the powerful Unreal Engine 4 features that allowed us to achieve this level of quality. I'll be showing you how to create realistic compositions, explaining dynamic lighting, atmospherics and particles, post-processing effects like grain, chromatic aberration and vignetting, and even in-engine color grading. I'll also be showing how we set up our meshes and textures to achieve such high quality in our close-up shots while maintaining good frame rates.
Como ya dijimos, la pantalla verde permite insertar imágenes generadas en una computadora. Esos espacios no existen en realidad, pero para el espectador sí. Son el lugar donde ocurre la historia. Otra área en la cual la tecnología digital ha modificado la forma como el cine se había hecho hasta ahora son los efectos relacionados con el maquillaje y el uso de aplicación de prostéticos. Los prostéticos son pedazos de látex que sirven para cambiar la manera como se ve un rostro. Veamos un clip relacionado con el tema.
Movie makeup can do a lot more than just hide a few wrinkles and make attractive actors look even better. It has the power to bring imaginary characters to life. These are the top 10 makeup transformations of all time. Starting us off at number 10, we're looking at the original X-Men franchise. Prosthetics master Gordon Smith orchestrated dozens of incredible mutant transformations for the film, from Sabretooth to Nightcrawler to Toad to Senator Kelly. But our number 10 goes to his most impressive mutant of them all, Mystique. Rebecca Romijn spent up to 12 hours in the makeup chair daily for her role as Mystique. And while her look is probably best known for how revealing it is, she was actually covered by silicone prosthetics on almost 2/3 of her body before being airbrushed from head to toe. And of course, we have to give an honorable mention to Frances Hannon's take on the look with Jennifer Lawrence in X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past, where they've gone from an airbrush process to a full bodysuit.
5, 4, 3.
As long as there have been movies, people have been using makeup to turn men into women. Gender swapping has ranged from Charlie Chaplin to Terry Jones to Robin Williams to John Travolta. And let's not forget the transformation of women into men like Glenn Close and Cate Blanchett. But our number 9 goes to perhaps the most classic gender swap of them all, from Tootsie. Dustin Hoffman allegedly agreed to only take the role under the condition that the makeup was good enough for him to pass as a woman on the streets of New York. So, makeup artist Alan Weisinger set out to transform him not into a caricature, but into the real thing. And it was no easy feat. In addition to conventional makeup, Weisinger stretched Hoffman's face taut, shrunk his pores, and provided him with longer, thinner teeth in order to sell the look. And it worked. Hoffman made a convincing woman, fooled his daughter at her elementary school, and even had a personal epiphany, bursting into tears when he looked at himself the way he looked at other women, changing his outlook for good.
Molecular decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging.
We couldn't talk makeup without looking at some of the horrifying monsters it's helped create. And while David B. Miller's Freddy Krueger comes first to mind, our number 8 goes to an even more impressive transformation: Chris Wallace's Brundlefly from The Fly. For Jeff Goldblum's gradual transformation, Cronenberg and Wallace started from the final mutated form and worked backwards. With 7 different stages of genetic mutation, Wallace's team didn't think it could be done in just 3 months, but after tireless preparation, 5 hours in the makeup chair, and up to 5 pounds of prosthetic appliances, the result speaks for itself.
Life is full of surprises.
From the real-life Rocky Dennis of Mask to the completely make-believe Sloth of the Goonies, sometimes makeup is used for a more human kind of disfigurement. But for our number 7, we've got to give it to the Elephant Man. Originally, the director David Lynch decided that he was going to design the makeup entirely himself. However, it didn't turn out so well. In fact, it was a disaster. And a week before shooting started, a panic production finally brought Christopher Tucker, an actual makeup artist, on board. And he certainly had his work cut out for him. His design included 15 different sections that he worked on with his team for up to 49 hours at a time in preparation. And in order to properly simulate the real-life Elephant Man, who died in 1890, Tucker worked off not just a cast made of his head, but his actual skeleton. And when the Academy didn't honor him with a special award, voters sent in angry letters in protest, which prompted the Academy to introduce the Best Makeup category the very next year. That's right. This is the movie that convinced the Academy to honor makeup.
It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Of course, because the Academy Award for Makeup didn't appear until 1981, there were a lot of classic movie transformations that went unrecognized. And while The Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame were both incredible early achievements in the art, there's nothing more iconic and recognizable than the original Frankenstein's monster. Jack Pierce is the man responsible for the trademark bolts and scars. And remember that this was the early 1930s, so he didn't have any sort of newfangled silicone or latex to work with. Instead, he spent 4 hours each day building up Boris Karloff's head with gum, cotton, and a syrupy surgical dressing glue called collodion. And after adding 35 pounds of costume and makeup to Boris, the final touch actually belonged to the actor himself, who gave himself an eerie facial dent by removing his dental plate. Delicious.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Next up at number 5, the apes in the original Planet of the Apes. When John Chambers, who got his start doing facial reconstructions for World War II veterans, was first brought onto the project, he spent hours and hours at the zoo studying the expressions of apes. And in order to capture the flexibility and movement of their faces, he actually invented a new type of rubber foam for the film's appliances. But that wasn't his only challenge. He had to costume hundreds of different actors in multiple different species over the course of the film. So he hired up to 80 different makeup artists. He actually used so many of Hollywood's makeup artists that there weren't enough to go around for the other films shooting at the time, many of which were delayed by that fact. Of course, we couldn't forget to mention the makeup from the 2001 remake. Although the movie itself was take it or leave it, legendary makeup artist Rick Baker brought the look of the apes into the 21st century and totally kicked ass on over 500 different apes.
How old are you?
7, but I look a lot older.
From Citizen Kane all the way to Benjamin Button, with loads of movies in between, makeup artists have time and time again needed to age an actor up a couple of years, or even a couple of hundred. And it's always an incredible transformation to watch. But for our number 4, we're looking at Don Corleone from The Godfather.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Now, this might come as a bit of a surprise for those of you who hear Marlon Brando and think Don Corleone, which probably speaks to how good the makeup was, but he actually looked pretty different. He was only 47 when he took on the role of the Don. It was up to makeup pioneer Dick Smith to add a couple extra decades on top. But Marlon Brando being Marlon Brando, he refused to wear prosthetics because he didn't want to spend that much time in makeup every morning. So instead, Dick Smith just painted it all on. As for his world-famous jowls, those aren't really the result of tissue paper, although that is where the idea came from. They're actually created by a special dental device called a plumper. The result is so seamless and so convincing that it has to be one of the top makeup transformations of all time.
All I wanted was a beer. But the day I met Selby, I'd spend most of the afternoon sitting in the rain about to kill myself, so you can understand. I was flexible.
Makeup can age, disfigure, and gender swap actors, but it can also transform them into totally different people when a film calls for it. From Bela Lugosi in Ed Wood to Edith Piaf in La Vie en Rose to another Bruce Willis in Looper. But our number 3 belongs to the incredible transformation of Charlize Theron into Aileen Wuornos for Monster. Although Theron gaining 30 pounds for the role certainly helped, Tony G went to far greater lengths to transform her. She fried and thinned her hair, shaved and bleached her eyebrows, airbrushed her face with layers of tattoo ink and marble sealant in order to create the worn-down look seen on screen. Surprisingly, the only prosthetics used were dentures and eyelids. The contrast is almost unbelievable, from model to serial killer through makeup alone. There was hardly a moment in makeup history so funny as when Tom Cruise showed up as Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder, dancing across screen in a gold chain and fat suit. But for our number 2, we think 21 Jump Street was just a little better. Now, if you haven't seen the movie yet, and you definitely should, you might want to skip this bit because we're about to drop some major spoilers. 21 Jump Street was the ultimate meta-comedy, and it constantly poked fun at itself for being just another Hollywood reboot. But when the bearded biker DP pulled off his nose to reveal that he was, in fact, Johnny Depp, it was impossible not to get caught up in the magic of the transformation because his disguise was so perfect that he spent the entire movie hiding in plain sight. And finally, at number 1, we have to pay homage to the incredible magical creatures of Guillermo del Toro. From the everything but his eyelids costume for Hellboy to the looking out his nostrils pale man from Pan's Labyrinth, Guillermo del Toro is a director known for bringing the fantastical to life. And for our number 1, we have to pick his fawn from Pan's Labyrinth. An achievement not just in makeup but in animatronics, the ears and eyelids of the fawn mask were remote controlled while Doug Jones acted underneath. And if you think that was heavy, consider the 10-pound horns he had to wear on top of it all. Of course, the fawn's transformation didn't just stop at his face. The latex foam suit continued all the way down to a pair of intricate legs that had the actor standing on 8-inch lifts while his real legs were digitally removed. The result is a complete magical transformation and just the kind of makeup that brings dreams and nightmares to life.
Un ejemplo de la tecnología tradicional de maquillaje son las siguientes imágenes de la película llamada Hombre Lobo Americano en Londres. Esta transformación se hizo por medio de efectos especiales de maquillaje y la transformación se filmaba poco a poco, como si se tratara de una animación tradicional y no computarizada.
Werewolf's iconic transformation scene was achieved with nothing but good old-fashioned practical effects, and the magic of Rick Baker. The effects guru created prosthetic versions of actor David Norton's limbs, then fitted them with air bladders to make them deform as Norton's character turned from man to wolf. For the facial transformation, 2 animatronic heads created the illusion of the actor's head reshaping itself into something more wolf-like. And the furry overcoat? That effect used the latex skin threaded with thousands and thousands of wiry hairs. Baker filmed the hair being pulled backwards through the skin, then reversed the shot to stimulate rapid growth. The final result was so realistic and terrifying that it earned its creator the 1982 Academy Award for Best Makeup. And when the movie got its inevitable 21st century reboot in the form of An American Werewolf in Paris, the terrible CGI effects couldn't hold a candle to this practical wizardry.
La manera como actualmente se hacen este tipo de transformaciones es por medio de un efecto de computadora llamado Morph. Veamos un ejemplo.
Balance of essence. Fire begets snow. Loxwar Danalora. Luwatha Danu.
Believe in the word.
Tuwatha. Schnockstone. Loxwar Danalora. Luwatha Danu. Tuwatha. Loxwar Danalora. Loxwar Danalora. Luwatha Danu. Tuwatha. Danu. Loxwar Danalora. Tuwatha Danu. Tuwatha. Skunks Danu. Loxwar Danalora. Tuwatha Danu. Tuwatha. Danu.
Para terminar este bloque es conveniente que recordemos un concepto del cual ya hemos hablado antes y que se llama toma. Para hablar de tomas debemos de recordar lo que es una escena. Recordemos que para filmar una escena, esta se filma por pedacitos. La cámara se sitúa en una posición que permita contar ese pedacito de la historia. Cada vez que se corre la cámara desde un mismo lugar, eso se llama toma.
Las tomas son los diferentes intentos que se llevan a cabo para conseguir el plano que queremos y que se irán numerando en la claqueta, en el caso de ser un rodaje con un equipo, claro. Puede que haya que repetir varias tomas porque sea un movimiento de cámara complicado o porque hay que afinar algo en la interpretación de los actores, etc. Y para seleccionar fácilmente las tomas se suele colocar la claqueta delante de la cámara antes de darle a grabar para que sea lo primero que se vea y sea fácilmente identificable. Así, cuando lleguemos al montaje es más fácil organizar el material si elegiremos la mejor toma de cada plano, o podremos elegir parte de una toma y parte de otra también. Hacer un mecánico. Hacer un mecánico no consiste en arreglar coches, no. Hacer un mecánico consiste en hacer un ensayo de los movimientos de los actores y de la cámara antes de hacer la primera toma. Es decir, consiste en ensayar bien los movimientos y la puesta en escena justo antes de rodar para que todo el equipo tenga claro lo que tiene que hacer y no rodemos material innecesario.
Adicionalmente, debemos destacar que hemos estado usando de manera frecuente las palabras casi siempre, o a veces, en relación con los recursos narrativos. El motivo es que los autores de cine constantemente están innovando este lenguaje, por lo cual estas reglas se rompen constantemente. Con estos cambios, el resultado es que un recurso narrativo cambia el rol al que tradicionalmente se asignaba. En este bloque, hemos tratado de marcar algunas de las convenciones más frecuentes en el uso de los recursos narrativos, pero siempre hay posibilidades de que estos cambien.